talked about in part one. Is there anyone who needs to hear what my background is or anything like that? Or why I know a little bit about environmental? Thanks, Ashley. I'm glad you can hear me loud and clear. I like having you in these webinars. So make sure if you're going to ask any questions or anything, just go ahead and put it in chat, and then we'll post it if we've got, if it's pertinent and we've got time to talk to you about it. Any question? There is no dumb questions. You probably want to ask questions so you can slow me down a bit. If I don't get a lot of questions, I go pretty quick, and then people pretty much aren't able to follow along or don't get the gist of what I'm saying. So remember, any questions, send me a chat. We're going to go ahead and get started. I've got a couple housekeeping things to take care of first. First of all, I've noticed that a lot of you aren't currently our clients, probably about half of you. We give these webinars on a regular basis. We have all kinds of topics. Susanna is the key moderator of these webinars for me. She sets them up, Susanna Lopez. It's really Susanna Amaya, that's her maiden name. But in any case, Susanna will put in chat what our two brand new topics are that's upcoming in our webinar. So if you ever need anything, need copies of checklists that I mentioned, copies of anything, need to try one of our, if you're new and need to try one of our radius search reports, which is called a rec check, that's the 1 mile database search. Just let Susanna know. If you want to find out about our webinars, you go to our website, www.reccheck.com or lenderrisk.com. And right there is our webinars. And you can register to any of the webinars by just clicking on them. It's pretty easy. You do have to register with us, but all you have to do is put in your name and email address. Everything else is just extra stuff. You can see Susanna's already put that up there. Susanna, you might write in the chat what our two new webinars. One of them says Thursday and one of them's next week. And like I said, if you're a client, all these forms I mentioned, we'd be glad to send you copies of them. If you're not our client, you need to become our client, because our goal is to try to help you become more efficient, make more profit, do a better job, be more accurate, stay out of jail, not get sued. And so these talks, if you can pick up 5 or 10% of something new that's going to help you do your job, then it's a winning thing and it's not a waste of your time. Because these webinars don't cost anything. Now, once you register for these webinars, obviously you're going to get sales literature and everything else from us, because we've got to get something back for my time, even though it's not worth a heck of a lot. But, old guys have a hard time learning new tricks. So during this talk, if you have any feedback, any comments, anything you can give me to help me learn, I'd appreciate it. Anyway, I gather nobody wants me to talk about my background. I've been in the business for 35 years, and that's probably all you need to really know. We're going to get started. So I told you, a lot of you on Optimize Your Phase 1, Part 1, didn't attend. So the big issue on Part 1 was making sure you set up the right files so you were organized. That extra 15 minutes worth of work is really important. And you'd set up a field file with site contact, location, map for marking on, field checklist, very important, field or inspection checklist, whatever you want to call it. Quarter mile map with reg data, that kind of thing. And then job opening, make sure the questionnaires were sent out promptly the day you won the job so you get them back in time to write the report and maybe to do you some good on the site inspection. Order the radius search report and regulatory history if you do that. We have a standard pack that people just love. It's $280. You get it in 2 to 3 days. Sometimes even quicker now. You can do a rush too on them. And it's not that much money. If you're paying more than that for a standard pack that has aerials, city directories, fire insurance maps, and a radius search, you're probably getting ripped. Our rec check report or radius search report is $74. Our biggest competitor charges around $110. We have more data. Our reports designed and put together by environmental professionals, and it's more user friendly. So if you're paying more than $74, well, I don't know what you're paying for. Maybe you can tell me. So there's also where it's good that the report writer or the who's ever doing the sidewalk and or inspection, which may be the same person as the report writer, review a bunch of these documents beforehand, which would be the 1 mile radius search report, all this other stuff before the site inspector goes out or before they go out and inspect. So they go out one time and get everything done one time. And then doing everything in the same pattern, sidewalk in a clockwise pattern, outside, inside, everything the same thing. Marking where your photos are on a map and all that stuff. So now we're going to talk about organizing all this stuff and then actually writing the report in the ERS Phase 1 report writing template that is free to anyone who orders a rec check report. If you don't order a rec check report, you can't click to get that free and you're not going to get it. And besides that, it automatically shoots in a lot of the data from the radius search report right into the report. Now, those report writing templates can be adjusted and changed to fit your template. And it could actually almost be all your template. Your limits and liabilities and all that other stuff can be inserted, and a template can be designed just for you, and that's a free service as long as you're going to end up doing most of the work because we're going to give you a Word document, our template, then you're going to insert your stuff into it, and then we'll make it work. And that's a free service to our clients. You have to become our client. And so we just went over part 1. We're going to go ahead and talk about optimizing your phase 1, part 2. Now, we're not going to write a complete report because writing a complete report would take us 2-3 hours, right? But we're going to show you how a good report writing template and other things can help you and assist you, and having all these documents can assist you in writing that report and interpreting the data. So we're going to go ahead and get started. So the first thing you need to do is you need to have all these documents in front of you. You need the owner, user, site questionnaires and/or interviews. You need all completed interviews from any agencies, health department, anything like that. Maybe when you reviewed the initial rec check report, you're going to, you decided you needed to go do a file review on a site while you were out in the field. Very important that this is all documented, and you should have the paperwork in order for your employees or you to document this and file it away. Remember, documentation is very important. The owner, user, site questionnaires are legal documents. If they say there's no environmental hazards or environmental materials usage or anything like that on the site, and later on it's found that there is, and they said there wasn't, hey, you're protecting you and your client. There's repercussions to that. You want all these documents. Remember, you're in a phase one, you're really building facts, a series of facts to identify recognized environmental concerns. And a recognized environmental concern can be an actual current concern or a potential for a concern. That includes potential for vapor intrusion, potential for soil or groundwater contamination. That's why you're building these recs. It's very, very important. Okay, so you got to get all these documents either in digitized form or in front of you in a file. Remember, initially in Optimize Part 1, you created a report writing file. Very important because all these documents go in there as they come in. Field checklist. Our field checklist, exactly thousands of phase ones were done using this field checklist, and this field checklist matches the report writing template. So you take this field checklist, the inspector, the site, whoever goes out, does a site inspection, and fills out this checklist right on site. Not only does the checklist make sure that nothing's missed, that every single different combination of what you need for writing a good phase one environmental site assessment is addressed, it cues them on making sure they don't miss anything, and they make sure they fill out the whole thing before they leave the site, because you don't ever want to have to go back to the site twice. All that does is cost you money. Remember that. So you get the rec check report in front of you, your historical items, aerials, topos, city directories, fire insurance maps if available, all file reviews for agency contacts. So now you got to have all these things in front of you and ready to go, ready to review. Now you want to make sure you have a notepad in front of you, because remember, you're building facts from all these documents and all this work already done to support recognized environmental conditions of the property. Or there maybe isn't any recognized environmental conditions of the property. Remember, identifying good things is as good as bad things. So let's say you identify that hazardous waste storage is in double containment, it's all labeled, there's no leaks, it's all clean, there's no stains on the floor, you're in an automotive. In fact, you can eat off the floor like if you're in a Porsche repair station. I mean, these things, to note those are just as good as to no bad things, because you're setting what the site looked like at that space and time. So down the road, 10 years down the road, they find contamination under there. Hey, this is what this site was in their housekeeping at this time. That's all there is to it, right? You're documenting. Remember, a phase one a lot of times becomes a legal document, and so you really want to have all the supporting facts for whether you determine whether there's a concern on this site or not a concern on the site. And you've got to keep that in mind. You got to look at it a little different. So now we've got all these documents in front of us. We're going to review these documents. And it really depends on the order you want to review them in. You don't have to review them in any particular order. You can switch it up to keep your job interesting. You can do all kinds of things. And how you do it is really up to you and what you feel the most comfortable with. I like reviewing things in a certain order, and I do it kind of the same way. Because remember, I'm building a picture of the site. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up my report writing template, and I'm going to have it there in front of me so that I can write in it as I'm reviewing everything. So let's go to the report writing template, and I think it's right here. Here's the report writing template. Now, remember, I'm sitting down to write the phase one report. So this is our standard phase one template. You're going to see you replace the photo. Remember, in Optimize Your Phase One's Part 1, we said the first photo should take into account the signage of the property, the address, the front of the building. So on your cover page of your phase one report, somebody who gets multiple phase one reports, they can just look at the picture and know exactly what site they're reviewing, and they're going to the right site. Here, your client company name would go, and right here, this would be your environmental company's name would automatically go in there, because remember, you're registered with us. That's why it's important you put your company name in properly when you register with us, because it'll automatically shoot in here for you. And then again, your site, all that stuff will automatically shoot in here for you. It's pretty cool. Your project number. Now, this is our project number, but your project number would automatically shoot in there. So all you got to do is type in the client name, company, and address. Now, when our parent company used to do phase ones, we had a word processor. A word processor, even though most you environmental professionals think you're great typists, you're 60, 70 words per minute. You're the best and most accurate in the world. Hey, there's no doubt you're one of the best in the world. But a word processor is going to do 130 to 140 words a minute. Our field checklists, our owner user site questionnaires, all those fit exactly into certain sections into the report writing template. So as they come in from the field, come in from the client, the owner, the user, etc., even the environmental questionnaire from the bank can all be typed in by a word processor. They don't have to know where it goes in the report, because all the questionnaires and everything have question numbers, so they know right where to type it in. It's sweet, it's quick. So when you you sit down to write a report, you've already got a whole lot in the report writing template. So all you're left to do, hopefully, is interpret the data and use your brain to come up with the recognized environmental conditions. Pretty cool. And it saves you time and money. So, you can hire word processors part-time once they get used to your documents and your templates. Everything goes really, really quick. So, one thing about our report writing template is it gives us all kinds of options. So we're not even going to address this table of contents right now. And here's the executive summary findings. It's a little hard to do this until we wrote the report, right? So we're not even going to do that. But see where it says at the time of this assessment, the site consisted of approximately so many acres, developed, undeveloped, and currently owned by. Well, the questionnaires have that information right on them. If those were written in by a word processor, they'd already be there. But since they aren't, we have to go ahead and write them in. So let's look at an owner interview questionnaire. So here's one of our standard owner interview questionnaires. Right up front, what is the questions that are asked? Current owner of the site. So we've got current owner of the site. We've got the site name. We've got the site parcel number. And we've got that it's vacant land. Pretty good, huh? Right up front, we have a lot of information we needed to have up front. And then the acreage. So that could be put in by anybody, right? So let's look at it a little further and see if they had any environmental things. These are the basic generic questions. Are there any hazardous materials on the site? Oil, gas well, groundwater well, stormwater drains, anything like that? And they said no, and they signed this deal. This is a document that's very important to include in your phase one and to have. Everybody can see this, I hope. You can start seeing how it plays in to filling out this data. So right away, I could answer this. I could do 4.585 acres, and I could write, the people's name and all that stuff in there, right? If you're a word processor, all the red sections you can change to black by a click of a button, basically. This is a Word document, so it's easy to use. So conclusion summary, I can't draw conclusion summary because what happens is each recognized condition and each de minimis, historical, controlled rec all have their own little separate section, and you're building a case of a whole bunch of things, which I'm going to show you is all the way down. Oh, we went too far. Right here. So you start building your conditions, and each one is a list of what section you found a concern that makes this recognized environmental condition. And so you fill out these forms, and it starts building a case for a recognized environmental condition. And then they can go back and find the details in each section. And that's kind of how the report writing template works. Now, I do have thought about putting together a 4-hour webinar on how to write a phase one report using our template or anybody else's template as far as that goes, but I haven't done that yet. Now I can come teach how to do a phase one, how to do an inspection our way, adding in things you would want me to add in your way, and then you can modify that. And I'd be glad to, if you've got 5 or 10 people you'd like trained in your local area on a specific phase one. We can actually do a phase one complete in 2 days. The site inspection one day and writing the report the next day. Just, all you got to do is pay for me to fly out there and a place to stay and something a little better than McDonald's to eat. And I'd be glad to come do it for you if you're a client of ERS. Okay, so we got past the executive summary because we don't want to start filling that out yet. So site facts. I just showed you from the questionnaires that we've gotten back. We get all these site facts, right? And these can all be filled out from these questionnaires. Also can be filled out by a word processor. So site contact, field assessor report. Remember site contact, we filled out a, what do you call it? We filled out a form that says who the field assessor is going to meet on the site, their name, their cell phone number, and the time and date, and that helps fill all this out. We also got the parcel number from the questionnaire, and so we grab that really quickly from the questionnaire and fill it out too. So all that stuff is really important, but there's the parcel number, APN. Now, sometimes it's called things a little different depending upon what county and state you're in, but hopefully they have the parcel number because it makes it easy for you. Okay, so all this gets filled out as you're going along. So right away, here's one of our first standard answers that's got to be filled in. The subject building is heated or cooled by a heating and air conditioning system. The heating and air conditioning obtains its fuel from what? Electricity, natural gas, unknown sources, or subject building is not heated and or cooled by a heating or air conditioning system, which that's pretty rare, but I mean, if it's just a shed or a pole shed or some kind of storage or a barn or something, it may not be, right? So you start filling this thing out as you're going. In this case, see the APN numbers already filled in here? That's when we ordered the rec check report. It already had the address of the subject site and APN, and it automatically filled it in for the report writing template because I selected the report writing template. So data reconnaissance, total number of wells. Remember we saw that the thing with the wells, the field checklist says the units inspected. These are all things that protect you. Now, is there an exception? I think the thing we're going to look at, there is going to be an exception in this. And let's go ahead. We're going to skip ahead real quick because I like jumping around and changing things up a little bit. And we're going to look at the aerial photos. And I'm going to have a question for everybody. Nope, that's the wrong one. I want to look at the site photos. Okay, everybody see this site photo? What's the exception? What's the exception to the standards that I'd put in this phase one? Can anyone tell me? You got it. You're exactly right. Can I see the surface? Can I see staining, filled ports, pipes, anything in the ground surface. Look at that. Not at all, huh? Can't see that at all. So that would be one of my limiting conditions. Because of vegetation growth on the site, I was unable to inspect the surface of the property to see if there was any staining or concerns. So there you go. And you'd write that into your phase 1 right here. Right here, excuse me. And you would reference your site photos and photo numbers. That way, then the reader, reviewer can go see it. Now, section 2 is just your standard scope of work, which can be changed to your scope of work if you want a custom template. And so now we start filling out this report writing. Remember, we've got all our documents, and so it's really easy for it. I still want to get a little picture of this site before I really dive in and start writing this site. So this is where I'd probably jump to reviewing the site photographs. So let's go ahead and actually go through the site photographs. It's funny how that fits in, because remember, maybe I didn't do the site inspection. I know it's vacant land. I want to get a picture of the subject site. I've got commercial buildings adjacent to me, right? And I'm just going to go through them real quick again. I've got a clump of trees. A clump of trees is trying to tell me that there was probably some structure here at one time, and they planted all this vegetation. See that? Interesting, huh? And so all around me, it looks like commercial. Notice how the photos are labeled. Remember, the site assessor labeled these photos. Now, how do we get bearing for this? How do we understand what direction those photos were taken? Right there. So remember, we sent our assessor out with an aerial photo overview of the site, and they were to mark, and it says so right in the field checklist. They were supposed to mark an arrow starting from where they were standing in the direction they took the photo. Notice how there's not much vegetation on here, but notice this clump of trees here. So right away, I'm starting to think, first of all, this site had something on it. Second of all, they also mark adjacent sites on it. We have all this commercial surrounding our site. And third of all, it's lacking vegetation. But here we know the direction of OP01, right? So let's go back to OP01. Now I'm getting a picture of the site. I'm the report writer. I realize exactly where that was taken, where it was written, everything, and what's going on this site. So now I got a picture of my site, right? So really the next thing is, I don't need to fill out anything here because I mentioned it. Unless I see something that's a problem, I'm going to write out that I've got a problem with a photo and address it. But otherwise, I'm not going to do much about the site photo. They're already described. They're already in the appendix of our report. So now we're getting to geologic and hydrologic. And I really need to know some things that are going on here. I want you to note the soil type data automatically shoots into this report from our RecCheck report. But it's probably time to even get a better overview of our site and what kind of recs we're going to come up with for this particular site. So the next thing I would review, and keep in mind if you're writing at phase 1, you may do it differently, but I would probably review the rec check report. So here's the rec check report. The first thing I always do, because when I used to write reports and used to review these things, the first thing is check and make sure you're reviewing the right report, that your address is correct. And it is. The second thing, I know in this rec check report, to get around, you want to open the bookmarks. It makes it super simple and you can get around. Now the next thing I do is I go right away to the executive summary, and I'm going to find out that my site isn't listed for anything. That's good. See right here? It isn't listed for anything. That's cool. Okay, the next thing is I just want to verify that the coordinates or the site is correct again. Site address, coordinates. Okay, so I've got the right site. I want to skip down a little bit. I've got flood zone, I've got radon, and there's my soil type. And I got whether there's fire insurance maps or not. And there isn't. This is kind of a rural property, but it's good to know. So right away, I know what I'm going to have to start reviewing. So the next thing I do is I'm going to go to the quarter-mile radius map. Now, if this was a super congested site, you'd have a 1/16 of a mile radius map that you could zoom in on and see a lot better. But right away, the quarter mile's pretty good. So right away, I'm seeing green, yellow, red. Well, green is good. It means it's a closed case. There's no concern with this type of listing, that kind of thing. Yellow is the agencies did not supply us with enough data to determine if it's a concern or not, open or closed or anything, and you need to spot check these really quick. So right away, we're seeing green and yellow adjacent to us, and we've got a couple things. But we're noticing there's nothing on it, no listing for our site. That's cool, right? But the one thing I do see is, what's this right here? Showing a structure on our site. Remember, we saw that vegetation. That structure, I want to know what that structure was, right? So the next thing I'd do is I'd start reviewing some of these adjacent sites. So I'm starting to get a feeling for my site and how I'm going to fill things out, right? So I'm going to go to Map Details 1. That's going to give me the details on this site right here. So what is this? Historic. Well, what does that mean? Let's see. In 2016, it had an NPDES permit. Wow, that's interesting. So an NPDES permit, it's 12 feet lower than the subject site. That's huge. That is just freaking huge, isn't it? So we know, at a minimum, groundwater probably goes that direction. But also, we also know that if they had any kind of leak from that clarifier or discharge point or sump that they had the NPDES permit on, that then, if it leaked, it probably didn't go to our site. So that really isn't a concern to us. I'm not going to worry about that. So 3 is immediately adjacent to us, and 14, 15, those are all across the street. but I'm going to look at 3. 3's probably got a bunch of listings because remember, it's a commercial complex with a bunch of units. So we got a zillion listings. We're not going to go through them all, but you'd probably want to review them. So we've got an air district, an air permit. That means they release volatile organic chemicals into the atmosphere. They got a permit to do that. Usually it's some sort of solvents, thinners, that kind of stuff. Pro Products Inc. They're probably manufacturers. South Coast Air District. Wow. And they're lower than the site. So our site's kind of sitting on a bubble. Remember, this is west, the other one's east. That's pretty interesting. Keeping it in mind in Rancho Cucamonga, the groundwater is about 160 to 200 feet deep. So you'd have to have a huge spill for it to reach that. Cam Racks, another air permit. And you can go on, and you could read the Ultra Shield products. Remember, if you have a question, go ahead and ask. So basically, I'm reviewing this for concerns to my subject site. So when I get to these database listings in my phase 1 report that are automatically shot in, as far as I'm concerned, these aren't necessarily a concern to my site unless I see some spillage, a problem with what they do. So I just saw Ultra Shield products, cleaners and dyers equipment, wholesale. So you might want to do a file review on this site to see what the heck they do there. Definitely when you did the site walk, you should have looked to see if there was any monitoring wells, staining, or any outside storage regarding these buildings, right? Here we've got historic machine shop. Now see, each one of these are a different unit. That's unit L. This doesn't have the unit number, but they had a historic machine shop back in 97. Well, that's a long time to be a machine shop. We're looking at 20 years, 22 years, right? Machine shops are notorious for using solvents to clean oils and greases off their metals so they can paint them and that kind of stuff. Automobile parts and supplies manufacturers, consolidated electrical. Remember, I looked at the site photos. And so what I see in that site photo, look at right there, the electric manufacturing company. Now you can zoom in on these photos and all kinds of things, but I see it right there, right? Pretty interesting. Good stuff. So let's go back to the rec check report. And so we're starting to build a case. So right now, I'm going to list starting a rec potential. We don't know yet, but we're going to list historic manufacturing ID 3 because it is an adjacent site and it's very possible that could be a concern for us. And so write it down in your notes as you're going. So let's go ahead and go back to the quarter-mile radius map. That was 3. 8 I'm not as concerned about. Let's check 14 just really quick. I don't think 14 is going to be a problem. They use hazardous materials, GM service and parts operation. So they're more of a they're small quantity generator, and they're more of a parts plant. Let's see. They're just listed as listed as handling hazardous materials. So there's absolutely no risk. Air District, they got a they have an air permit. So that's interesting. It's a fairly new building. I think we want to find out when that building was built. Let's see if they have any listings for having any problems. So that's all the listings. So they have no listings for problems, and that's a good thing. So they probably have a little paint spray booth to touch things up when they get scratched and that kind of stuff. They have an active permit. So it's something we want to keep in mind. It's an air permit. Remember, we're looking at potential vapor intrusion to our subject site. So that's our second wreck that we may be building a case for. So let's look at something else, because remember, one of the things we've got to address nowadays is we've got to address potential for vapor intrusion, either from on-site or off-site. Well, air permits are a great way, because anyone who gets an air permit is getting it for volatile organic chemicals. Volatile organic chemicals are a hazardous substance usually. And here you can see who handles volatile organic chemicals close to your site. So right away, you can review those sites, groundwater, depth, flow, direction, all that stuff, and review those sites to see if they've been listed for a spill or any problem. Also, you can walk around those buildings, just go into the parking lot and walk around and nose around to make sure they're not storing stuff badly, things are overflowing, that kind of thing. And there's no monitoring wells from the spill they had. Because remember, you're trying to build a case for a wreck for your site. So our wreck check report helps you do that, especially for volatile organic chemicals. Pretty cool. Now let me show you something that nobody else does. No other database company has, which is that mapped air permits, but they don't have agency difference in map locations. Keep in mind, all database companies, including EDR, ERAS, GeoSearch, all these companies, including us, map, geocode all the sites based on address. We used to partially use the agency lat long on their listings, but they're so inaccurate compared to today's geocoding. And some of them are 10, 15 years old, the lat longs. So nobody uses them anymore, and nobody rectifies them except for us. And so basically, if a geocode on a listing is provided by an agency that's over 50 feet from where we geocoded that listing, then we show it here and map it for you to review. And really, all you'd want to do is review the real close ones, because it may be a listing of where a spill or a tank was on the south 40 of a big property and in that geocode. So maybe 9 out of 10 times it doesn't mean anything. 1 out of 10 times it could be a concern to your site, and you probably ought to look at them. So these are for you to review, to give you a heads up, nothing more. If you don't want to spend your time reviewing them, you don't do it. So again, that's the basics of using a good rec check, user-friendly report that you can get around in very easily and see all kinds of things. Remember, all the source descriptions or anything is here, and it also tells you which ones were found, and you can click on the list and all that kinds of stuff, and you get right to map ID 14, and it moves you around. Okay? Sweet. So let's get back to writing our report. So geologic and hydrologic. So groundwater in the site vicinity is so depth in that you can get all that stuff from the rec check report or in the direction from a topographic map. And if you work in that area, of course, you know what it is, and you can fill this out as you go. So now we're really down to gosh, something doesn't look right. 3.2. So now we're down to determining whether, and this is one of the things in the ASTM standard, is there waterways, wetlands, pits, lagoons, ponds, waterways, wetlands, pits, lagoons, ponds on our site, adjacent to our site, or is it no? Well, this is really sweet to fill out because all you got to do is go like that if it's no. It makes it really easy. The report writing template is quick, and it fulfills one of your obligations in your standard. Here's the FEMA data is automatically shot in. Stormwater discharge across the site appears to flow. That's in the field checklist. Let's look at a filled out field checklist so you can get an idea of where we're getting all this information. It must be here because this is the appendixes. So let's whoop. Well, anyway, you get all that data from the field, from the field checklist, that if you don't make it part of your appendix, then you should have it ready and available to pull up. In this case, I don't seem to have a copy of it. Optimize. So keeping in mind, all that data should already be typed in. And I showed you guys a sample of a field checklist in Optimize Part 1. So you fill out all that data from there. So let's go ahead and keep going down, filling out this template. So you're reviewing things as you're going along. So remember, the field checklist also has existing storage tanks. So in this case, existing storage tanks were vacant land. There are none. You would literally just delete this section. Because remember, this document is all a Word document. And all these standard answers can be changed and fit for your site. Hazardous substances storage and handling. Remember, we reviewed the field checklist, we reviewed the interview sheet, and you fill out this template. No storage of handling of hazardous substances was observed, or with the possible exception of common janitorial office supplies less than 20 gallons. That's what your policy is of your company. But you can change all these standard answers and make it work for you. Specific hazardous reconnaissance, whether you address asbestos or the client wants it, lead, paint, all those things, again, you have a selection. So at the request of the client, they didn't want non-scope items, or they did want non-scope item. You delete what you don't want to use. You review what you do want to use, right? So polychlorinated biphenyls. This is going to be in the field checklist. Was there a transformer on your property line? Was it old? Who was the ownership? All that would already be typed in and known. If you were doing an automotive shop and there were underground lifts, you might put it in here. Clumps, clarifiers, sumps, trenches, industrial discharge. No clarifier shunts were noted during the site reconnaissance. Well, probably because we couldn't see anything. There could even be a septic tank on this side, right? Surface conditions, same thing. Stressed vegetation, no. All these tables are designed so you put the location, photo number, everything, inside, outside, and then these all sum up. If the condition is a wreck, then it's going to get summed up in one of those tables in section 6, making your concerns your recognized environment condition. If it's not a condition, you'd write none. And it all connects and works together. Stress vegetation. Remember, all this is addressed in the field checklist, and it's very important. Now we're getting to prior or current agricultural use. Well, we've really got to review the aerial photos. They're going to tell us that, right? So let's go to the aerial photos just real quick. Here's our typical aerial photo package. Here's the subject site. We either put a red box or we put the actual parcel map over. We do not provide you with a light box. You can download Adobe's Lightbox and put all these images in if you want and screw around with them. We find it's a lot easier to review them by just looking at each one. So what I see is exactly like the property is today, all the commercial buildings around it. That's interesting, right? Here we go. Still the same thing, right? I'm still looking at this right here. So let's go like this. This definitely looks like a driveway, huh? So let's go to the next one. Now we're into 2005. Still, the property's the same. Interesting. Now, this is the building of this commercial. It was important because they have a spray booth and other things there, but never had any leaks. But what's the date? 2002. So it was built in 2002, fairly recent. This is new. There's no building here. This looks like it's brand new. Slab or something. Maybe a new roof. Still, our site has no building on it. Now this is vacant, but this is starting to look like agriculture. Blue line, not too useful. Now we've got definitely agriculture on all sides of us. We have something weird here. I'd like to know what that is. Now we've got a clump of trees, and this is 1966. Remember, reviewing these, you're making little notes because you're going to use this in certain sections of your report. But right there, we've got our farmhouse. We have it there. Definitely agriculture. 48, 38. And we go back as far as 38. We got row crops. We got orchards all around us. Pretty interesting stuff. Let's see if the USGS maps give us anything. Wow. First of all, we got our elevation. Second of all, we got a well right here across the street. Be good to get the sample analysis of that well the last time it was tested, right? See if we see anything else. Notice the red box makes it really easy for us to find our site. We've got our building on our site going all the way back to 1906. Oh my gosh, 1900. That's incredible, right? Building on our site back in 1900. Sweet. So now we got a lot of information. We're picking up more of a vision of our site. There was prior agricultural use. Whether you consider it a condition or not, you would fill this out. It's based on the historical photos. Here's where the vapor intrusion is. Remember, we're building a case. We're going to put photo number or whatever description makes it a concern. Now, in our report writing template, every major section has other environmental conditions for a catch-all. Very important. Remember then the next section, visual observation of adjoining sites. That was all filled out in the field checklist, also on that map I showed you, so all that could be put right in there really easy by a word processor. Review of historical information. Well, we just reviewed historical aerial photos, and if we had any concerns, we're going to write those in there. If there is no concerns, we'd say so. If there is, we'd write the years that the agricultural we saw, date of the documents, if agriculture is a concern for you. That's whatever your policy is. Most people consider use of agricultural chemicals or prior use a recognized environmental condition. Okay, historical map review. We didn't do that yet, but we do know there was no maps for this site. So we would select that first one and delete this because there are no fire insurance maps. The next one is city directories. We had city directories for this site. And here's where you would identify if city directories were a concern or not. Now remember, keep in mind, you're really looking for in the city directories that your site was a residence in reference to the adjacent sites, what they are used for, manufacturing, whatever, because it'll give you a clue if it's a risk or not, and especially this list of commercial condos or separate little buildings to the left of the west of the subject property. So you're going to review those city directories. Let's take just a real peek at those city directories. Here's our typical city directory report. And we go all the way back to 1951 from 2007. And here you'd be looking at all those cross streets. Now, how do you get your cross streets? Your record check report has your map in it. You should know your site, and you should know what your site address would be if it had an address. Some undeveloped sites don't have addresses until they get a building permit. So in any case, so you would look up your site and you would enter any data you have into here. And whether there's a concern or not, and if there is concerns, you would go ahead and write them in here. Again, deleting everything you don't use as you go along. Boom. I've got a picture. I'm getting to know my site pretty well. Some people do building department records, some don't. We've got every agency we could think of, fire department, building department. We submitted a request. There was no records. We submitted a request and we did get records, or they didn't respond. We have every option accounted for. Health and environmental records. All those things make it really easy and quick so you can whip through writing this report and doing it accurately. Sanitation, water quality. Remember, you can just delete a whole section. And then other pertinent records and file reviews. Remember, we always have a catch-all for everything. Oil, gas, pipeline, summary of pipeline agency records, water quality records, all those things all have a standard answer ready for you to write, making it quicker for you to write your phase one. Review of ERS record report. Remember, we reviewed it, and now from your review, these are just summary tables. You don't need to do anything in. You can cut and limit these tables. You can cut them out. But here's where you put whether they're a condition or not. Then you put them in a table for the condition. And why are they a condition? Or why aren't they a condition? And this is where you can address them all. We go out to a half a mile, but you can cut it simply by just going like that and deleting these. It's really easy. Or we can make it so you don't get out to a half a mile. Or you just do certain databases. It's really your pick and the flexibility of our template. And what you think is important to review and not to review. Additional environmental documents, another concern. And then this is where you were making notes of the historic use of the site. Well, our site's been vacant till X date, let's say 1990, and then it was used as agriculture from 1990 to, we've got at least all the way back to 2006. So there's your historical timeline. Really easy to fill out. Remember, as you're reviewing these documents, you're keeping notes beside you. You're trying to make the writing of the phase one, the review of the documents, as accurate and as fast as you can. Did you have any historical data gaps? No, because you got a great package from phase one. Now, the review titled Judicial Records for Environmental Liens or Activity and Land Use Limitations, Engineering and Institutional Control. A lot of environmental consultants don't fill this out and leave it on their clients. For heaven's sakes, ask your client if they have a preliminary title report and go ahead and fill this thing out, because they're not going to fill it out. And if it isn't filled out or addressed, basically the phase one doesn't meet ASTM standards. Therefore, it's not a good phase one. It's not valid. And you don't want to do your client that disservice. I charge them extra if you want to do it yourself, and they don't want to do it, and hire us to get your environmental liens and that kind of stuff. Interviews, this is where all your interview sheets should have been typed in by your word processor, but you can answer whether they're a condition or not, then sum them up in your recognized environmental conditions. Purchase price versus fair market value. I think this whole section's a crock, but we have to do it because it is in the standards. And so you need to know what it sold for the last time, what it's selling for this time, and if there's a difference, you've got to address it. And you've got a bunch of standard answers here. Now again, conclusions, recommendations. These comes from all the sections. And you may need to add rows. Adding rows is really easy. Insert below, boom, boom, boom. And you just cut and paste from those with the comments in them. And now you're building your case for your recognized environmental condition. And then you do your description, your action, and your estimated cost to complete that next step action. Some people provide that, some don't. If you don't provide this, just delete this row. Boom. It's no big deal. If you provide it under separate company, provide it. Then you go back up into your summary once all these are filled out, and you draw your final executive summary results. It's very accurate. It's very quick. And there you go. Sweet, right? And all your report is all put together. Now let's go to that executive summary real quick. And here's the executive summary. So you make as many of these as you need because you might have 2 or 3 recognized environmental conditions. In this case, we have 1 recognized environmental condition, agriculture, and maybe, I don't think we would have found enough data to really say there's a potential for vapor intrusion. So I probably wouldn't make that a thing, and I didn't see anything else. But, not able to see the ground cover could have been a concern, but we do got good aerial photos showing it was just agriculture. Now, do we know whether they mixed herbicides, insecticides, pesticides, and that kind of thing on the ground surface right there at the residences? And there's probably a little barn. We don't know that. And you wouldn't know that unless you're able to interview somebody who used to own it while it was agriculture or doing sampling. So you might consider that a recognized environmental condition and do sampling. That's, all these things. Remember the setup, the forms, the report writing template, all save you time and money, and that these things go out and get back in time. So when you write the phase 1, you have everything in front of you and you can do it. Worst case scenario, if you've got good site photos, and make sure your site inspector or assessor takes a lot of photos, takes photos of everything, especially things they don't know what they are. It's very important that all these things get pictures, so then you can send these pictures to your site contact or the owner of the property and say, hey, what is this? If you have an unknown feature, then guess what? You got a potential recognized environmental condition until you find out what that feature is. Then the phase 2 is identifying what that feature is, right? So I'm hoping you picked up a little something. I'm hoping this helped all of you. Does anyone have any questions, any concerns, anything they want to, any feedback, anything they want to give me? If we get enough people requesting it, I'll actually write a phase 1 report from stem to stern that we have all the documentation for and do a class. But that'd be about a 4-hour webinar, 3.5, 4-hour webinar. And that's a long webinar to sit through for anybody. So that's why we do these short little things. Do you pick up something to help if you picked up one or two items that is going to help you do your work better, more accurately, more professionally, and protect your company against lawsuits and your client, you got to, this is a worthwhile webinar. Keep in mind, if you're our client and you've got a picture of something, a report, a phase 1 or 2 or anything, and you have a question on it, you want a second opinion, send me a copy of it via email, call me, I'll look at it with you, and I'll give you for free, I'll give you my 2 cents worth. I'm obviously opinionated, I don't know it all, and maybe I can learn something from it too. So if I can help you in any way being successful and going on, doing a good job and optimizing your profit and gathering accurate facts, I will do that. We do go into local cities. If you can set up 3 or 4 meetings with local financial institutions, we link them into what we call our lender check report. And when it has a risk rating, anything higher than low, it automatically gets sent to you. And then you can tell them whether a file review, a transaction screen, a phase 1 is needed. And it links you into that bank, and we help you generate work. So if you're our client, we'd be glad to fly out if you set up at least 3 or 4 meetings with 3 or 4 different financial institutions to present a whole package for them to buy our lender check report and use your environmental services. So we work with you to do that. It works very well. If you're interested, get a hold of Susanna. Okay. Any questions? Anything else? It looks like people are already starting to bail. Thank you very much for attending. Check out our other webinars. Let's see. Does the aerial photos need to be to scale? No, not necessarily. Most of them, we give you the scale when we can. But most of them, we try to make sure that it's at least a block and a half around your subject property before it gets too blurry. So if it gets too blurry, zooming in too much, then we'll zoom out. And so the scale just really varies. There's no fixed scale. You have to say, you just need to be where you can see something. And every aerial photo is taken at different elevation and different scales. So, it really depends. We try to provide you with what we think could be useful. You're very welcome, Ashley. You ever have any questions or anything, you know who to call. Okay, everybody, thank you very much. Thank you for attending. It's basically lunchtime for me, and I'm starving. We hope you learned something, and if you're not one of our clients, we sure hope you become one of our clients, and we do give significant discounts to large volume projects, or if you order about 1,000 products a year, we can take care of you. We can help make you competitive. Thank you very much. Have a super, super good day. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.